Welcome to another edition of BCL Interviews. Today, we are going to be speaking to three gentlemen who describe themselves as crypto enthusiasts who have tracked the crypto markets over the last 5 to 6 years. We are joined by Mr. Harsha, Mr. Ajay, and Mr. Arun. Thank you, everyone, for making time for this conversation. We really do appreciate it, and we are excited to find out more about the crypto space from experts such as yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
If everyone is ready, we can begin.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Right. So the first thing I wanted to ask about is about the rise of cryptocurrency itself. How would you explain the rise of cryptocurrency over the last few years? Do you think it has something to do with its decentralized nature or the underlying blockchain technology, perhaps? It also presents a great investment opportunity, which has significantly contributed to its popularity, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. What do you think? What is your assessment?
So maybe I'll take this. There are two angles I see this cryptocurrency rise from, right? One is the increase in the usage of the cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology itself. And second is the rise in the prices. I mean, people generally try to track the rise in prices a lot more, but they're slightly different things. I mean, they do go hand in hand, but they are different things. So in terms of the increase in usage, of course, Gali can also add in more here, that we had Bitcoin. After that, we had Ethereum. Ethereum introduced the concept of smart contracts, which allowed people to do a lot more things. And over the last few years, DeFi has developed. So this is where the usage is increasing. More and more people are starting to use cryptocurrencies to do things, to create protocols, to do sort of banking on cryptocurrency. So that has been the rise in the usage. But the caveat is the real world impact is still limited on this one. So generally, most of this happens within the crypto universe itself. Most of the DeFi is within crypto universe as of now, but it's evolving. So the tools are being developed, and maybe if things go as the crypto universe is planning, they would like to have an impact on the real world as well. But the price is slightly different. So there, like you say, there isn't a fundamental valuation for cryptocurrency. It's not easy to do that. This is the revenue stream from this thing isn't possible. What actually drives prices, in my experience, or what I've learned from in my research, is it's a question of supply and demand. Who are the people who are selling? Who are the people who are buying? So there's a big hardcore group of people, we call them hodlers. So they just hold, they just keep buying, they keep putting the savings. So they are the foundation. They keep buying and keep have the buy pressure. The sell pressure comes from people like miners. They do mining. They are a business operation. So when they do mining, they get the cryptocurrency. They have to sell the cryptocurrency in order to get the cash and support the business. So they will have a constant supply. In between, you end up having other people who do things for speculative purposes. So they are volatile, and they sort of also cause volatility. So if you see the last two cycles, right? The last two cycles happen roughly within a year or two of something called as a halving event. So what happens is every few years, Bitcoin reduces the amount of rewards they give to miners. So last one was in 2016, which after a year or so accumulated in the last bubble, last peak. So what happens is if you are reducing the amount of cryptocurrencies you give to miners, the amount they have to sell has reduced. And all else equal, if everything else is equal, this just means that the amount of Bitcoin available to sell reduces. So over time, the price slowly creeps up. Now, once with this slower increase in price, of course, people then pile in. Everybody starts saying, oh, Bitcoin is rising, and then they start piling in. That's where the bubble tends to start to build up. It builds up to a peak or a crazy level, and eventually it falls down. But if you notice, the price at which it falls down to is not the price at which it started off the journey at. So that increase is still there because the supply and demand sort of net out at that level. Same thing. So the another halving event happened in 2020 for Bitcoin, and then it went up. And it's generally, if you track the prices, you'll see that there is a high correlation between Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as well. So Bitcoin tends to go up, and then the other currencies as well go up in line. So the prices is more driven by this supply and demand thing. And, it's not like suddenly in the year 2017 or 2021, suddenly there was a big surge in usage of, it's not like that. It's more driven by the supply and demand.
Fair enough.
If I can add some context to what Ajay just said.
Sure.
You need to think of cryptocurrency as it is today to be a payment for a service that certain computers provide you the world over. Right, and this payment has not yet breach the real world barrier. And the moment it does that, the use for that payment, the token that you're paying with, it suddenly increases. Think of it as a receipt, right? If somebody is providing a service, you are giving him a receipt saying, yes, you have provided the service. That's cryptocurrency. There are different types, of course, but I'm just giving you the example of one. And the moment that receipt has a valid acknowledgement in the real world, the game completely changes. And that has not happened.
Yes, okay.
And this time around, of course, the bubble was also helped by the amazing amount of liquidity that's there in the world right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the next I wanted to ask you guys about NFTs. They recently started becoming a bit of a craze, and they've seemed to have opened up a new paradigm for artists in terms of how they ensure that royalties are paid and they clarify ownership. One of the most high-profile NFT sales resulted in being the fourth most expensive piece of artwork sold by a living artist. What is your analysis of NFTs in terms of its influence on the art world and in terms of NFTs as an investment? Are we in a bit of a bubble right now, with all these exorbitant prices that we're seeing, or is this just a sign of more things to come?
Unlike the finance world, where you say bubble to mean that it is beyond rational expectation of return, in the art world, there is no meaning to bubble. I mean, you could say there is a bubble, somebody might beg to differ, right? Let's say somebody is buying a piece of art because it means a lot to him. It sort of, it appeals to him and his his background and where he comes from, and it doesn't appeal to you or someone else. It does not mean there's a rational reason for that, and there is no explanation for those things. It's a matter of heart. Any price is okay. Now you need to think of NFTs as something to sort of, it's like a validated ownership of digital assets. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to gift me a song by my favorite singer, let's say Ilyaraja or someone, and you get Ilyaraja to record it and you give it to me, right? You send it to me as my birthday gift. Now I could forward it, or you could send it to 10 other people. It would not be unique, right? But if you want to really make it unique, you can sign it digitally and say that this is an NFT token. Only the person who owns this can actually sort of claim ownership over this. I could share it with others. Maybe I could put it up on a site and others could enjoy it, but it would be mine and I can prove ownership of it, right? This is NFT. It allows you to claim digital ownership, which so far was absent. It is enabling a new thing to happen. So to think of NFT as art only is also sort of invalid in the sense that it encompasses a wide variety of things. Let's take the example of gaming. I don't know if you are aware of this, but the gaming industry is still nascent in India, but worldwide it is, I think, some $160 billion worth. And even in India, if you're clued into the gaming space, you realize that teenagers, engineering kids who have just passed out and are in their jobs, spend a lot of money in games. And in games, they purchase items which have sort of, they can claim ownership over. This is actually NFT. It's a primitive NFT. Now, if you add on top of this the ability to sell it, transfer it, the ability to make unique changes to it, then it becomes a very rich digital asset. And this layer around it would be called an NFT. Now, it would not mean much to somebody outside, but in the gaming world, that is of tremendous potential, right? So NFT has two potential applications, one in the art and this one, and the second in gaming. The third, they're using it in ticketing. That's also a very important application, right? Let's assume that you are starting an event. You have no clue how well it will sell. You price it at a certain price and you sort of give out the tickets. People buy it. But then the demand for that particular artist or whatever the event is goes through the roof. The price might double, become 10 times. People call it selling in black, right? It might sort of increase. Now, if you had sold these tickets on NFT, you can claim a portion of that gain. You do not need to let it go. So you can say that 20% of any sale that happens subsequently, I need to get, or 50% I need to get, or maybe 90% I need to get. It could be possible. The moment you make it uniquely identifiable, and then somebody can claim ownership of it, you can do all these things. Transferring of NFTs then becomes a very recognizable event, and at the time of the transfer, they'll have to pay you, right? I mean, there are workarounds and there are a lot of other implications. This is still nascent, that's still working these things out, but you can claim benefit even after the sale, right? Let's say the original artist created a painting and sold it, but while selling, he informed the buyer that any future sale, I need a claim on the sale. The same thing is possible. Music artists, it gives tremendous power. On the flip side, there is another way that NFT things have sort of improved. The blockchain technology has improved the lives of artists. Anybody can go to an open platform and say, publish their work. And if they have fans who are like, even maybe an author, maybe a singer, maybe a painter, whoever it is, they can fund his work, right? Those who really believe, the core people who really believe in that person, can fund his work. And later, when there's a reward for that, they can also participate, not just the artist. The people who early on supported that person, they can also benefit from the rise of that artist. All of these things are possible with blockchain. Hope that answers your question.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. It does. Next, I wanted to ask you about blockchain technology. And blockchain, as we know, has a number of use cases that could radically change the way many industries work. It's already being used in the healthcare and financial services industries. According to you, which industry do you think will adopt it next, or which industry do you think blockchain has the most potential for?
In terms of its native design, the original thinking was like programmable value, which means it was designed for financial services becoming more decentralized. That is the origin story, programmable value. For instance, if you see information, when I send an email to you, it reaches you instantly. But if I have to send money to someone in another part of the world, it takes some time. The information reaches pretty fast thanks to internet, but value, as in money in this case, doesn't move as fast. Can we do something about that? That's the foundational thinking behind Bitcoin, Ethereum from the developer community. Programmable value. Hence, a substantial amount of its efforts has been in financial services and its impact on the rest of the world. So, even NFT is in an indirect way, it is about having financial services having an impact on gaming and other industries. That's been the foundational thinking. What's happening of late is that there are the idea of decentralization. Turns out you can explore ideas like any industry where there is significant amount of market concentration. For instance, let's look at the advertising industry, digital advertising industry. There's significant amount of concentration in the hands of Google search, and hence, as you can imagine, consumers and businesses which engage with Google may not be getting the best deal right now, contrary to how things were 10 years ago. Right? Can you apply blockchain to decentralize what is essentially an ad exchange? Yes, turns out there's a token called basic attention token, which decentralizes Google search and Google's advertising business. Basic attention token is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it has pretty significant credibility. So that is advertising industry. Another bunch of people are figuring out how to decentralize domain name registration. Now, this seems esoteric, but let's think about it. In United States, something interesting happened in January this year. The technology industry, all of them came together and said, citizens of the United States cannot access this website called Parler, P-A-R-L-E-R. Now, Parler was this, a right-wing news social network. You could have your ideological views about whether it's good or bad, but the technology industry came together and said you cannot access this particular service, right? So we are underestimating the amount of concentration or power the technology industry already has in allowing access to some service to some people in the world, right? There's no law that said you should not have access to this. There's no court order, nothing. They said, we don't like this. That's roughly what they said. Okay? Now, so every layer in that technology stack that enable that is potential for different disruption. So for instance, currently, if I take a website, it's typically it's hosted on something like GoDaddy. And GoDaddy can be asked by some ideological entity to say disallow access to the website. And some people sometimes might make that decision, right? This happened once. But if you do this on a decentralized domain name service, right? no one can say I cannot host this. The website is always available. No one can disable access to that website. That is powerful for free speech. That is powerful for content, right? And so that's the media industry. And there are more now. Let's look at the content industry. And a more interesting version of this in blockchain is this. So there are people who are trying to make a movie about Ethereum's rise, right? Guess how it is getting financed? It is not getting financed by the Hollywood studios. It is getting financed by crowdfunding campaigns and people who are willing to put some of their Ethereum earnings into funding this movie. So the way capital raising for a movie itself is basically built on blockchain in that model, right? So this is different now. This is capital raising for movies. Then there is a journalist, pretty interesting, and he or she said that I want some money to go do investigative journalism on this particular theme. And he or she put it out on the internet, and people said, let me fund your efforts. So she raised crowdfunding, and we knew that we could trust that because the person is going to deposit that work over there, the person has credibility over there. So this is journalism being funded by ideas from blockchain. Blockchain leading to crowdfunding leading to investigative journalism. So this is all in the space of content and advertising. Can commerce get decentralized? Potentially possible. We've seen a couple of examples. It's quite possible commerce will have a decentralization vector as well. But perhaps it's kind of too early for us to say concrete examples. Communication, yes. So there's this company called BitCloud. BitCloud, a way to think about it is like it basically decentralized Twitter. So currently Twitter can get rid of Donald Trump, right? About having the most powerful man in the world, but Twitter has even more power to get rid of him from the left side, right? So that's kind of centralization. And BitCloud, you cannot get rid of Donald Trump. You cannot get rid of whoever you don't like, right? So that is content, communication, and commerce, and then financial services, and we already covered. Gaming, we have covered, and so on and so forth. A useful way to think about it is like wherever there is some centralization of power is leading to terrible outcomes for end users, right? It will have a blockchain cases. Will all of them turn out to be as big as something in which we see? But that's the simplest thing. Anywhere centralization of power leading to terrible outcomes for consumers or citizens will have a blockchain cases, right? And that's a way to think about it broadly.
I see. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Thanks. Next, I wanted to ask you guys about the Indian crypto space. We're seeing the space develop with a lot of local exchanges now gaining prominence. What do you think is the potential for cryptocurrency in India? How big is the market, and how much of it depends on the government stance as well?
So currently, it is seen as cryptocurrency, and this entire reputation around cryptocurrency as gambling, casino, speculation, and variants of that. Right? So currently, that's what it is. But on the same side, the government, herself said that the underlying technology has a lot of potential. So this is the balance that the government is exploring how to strike this balance. I like the thing. But the whole gambling thing requires consumer protection. So I need to figure out how to get
Let me take over. Your voice is breaking. Let me take over.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think the government is trying to. I assume you're talking about the Indian cryptocurrency market, as in the investing of all the retail investors putting money in that. So the government has a view that blockchain technology is useful. Speculative cryptocurrency is not. That is something that they have been talking about. While the entire investments in 2020 was, Chainalysis claimed that it is about $40 billion. It's hard to estimate investments in this space. They have some methods of doing it, but it's very sort of rough kind of methods. But they're saying it's about $40 billion. The cryptocurrency market itself, forget the cryptocurrency market. Let's talk about the blockchain market. It would revolutionize logistics. It would revolutionize art. It would revolutionize gaming. It would revolutionize media. It has so many applications. The potential is limitless, right? To estimate the size of that industry, we need to get into some really big numbers. Now, those are what is relevant, and people should be focusing, and the government should be focusing and encouraging. And the government has to try and enable this, a lot of this, and all the startups, they should give some sort of a platform, some sort of incentive to do this out of India. because worldwide we are seeing, even in the US, in many other countries, governments are taking a very non-nuanced stand on this, right? Cryptocurrency is bad, let's ban it, or let's ask them to follow the rules of listed stock markets or listed exchange. This is a very primitive way to approach it. It's a new concept. You need to come up with new rules which are in sync and which are appropriate to the sector. If the Indian government can steal a march on the other governments and do this, there's a huge value to be captured, right? In the IT itself, providing the IT service and the IT products itself, there's a huge value to be captured. And then, of course, the benefit of implementing that across the different sectors, the efficiencies that it will unlock, nothing like it.
I see. Okay, fair enough. I just had one last question to ask you guys. We saw the value of cryptos go through the roof over the pandemic, largely because people were using it as a hedge against inflation. The market seems to have settled down now a bit. When do you see the next opportunity present itself to investors? Or, in other words, what are you on the lookout for from an investing point of view?
Okay, to start off with, I'm not sure it was exactly as a hedge for investors. So like I started out saying, right, the price of cryptocurrency is a function of supply and demand. It roughly seems to correlate with these halving events. This time around, it was helped by the splurge in liquidity. So it might be more appropriate to think of it as a risk on sentiment. So every asset class in the world exploded, right? So stock markets have amazing valuations right now, which many people will believe are unrealistic as well. So that's something similar has carried over into the crypto world as well, because of the unprecedented liquidity that the central banks have pumped in, which was needed because of the pandemic. Okay, so when would it come again? Like I said, right, whenever halving event happens, something comes through. But I would also like to point out that the share or the presence of Bitcoin as a bigger as a percentage of the whole crypto universe is sort of reducing. Ethereum is becoming bigger and bigger. So the dynamics would slightly change as well going forward. So for example, even now, Ethereum is making some changes to its protocol, which would reduce the supply. They plan to burn some of the Ethereum because of this. So that already could, okay, all else equal, that could trigger a slight upward pressure. Now, I don't want to say this will necessarily trigger uprun because there are so many other factors, right? If central banks withdraw liquidity and they start tapering, the impact of that will be higher than the impact of the reduced supply from Ethereum. So you need to consider those two in aspect, but this is how it will play out. We need to see what are the supply side changes. The second factor, of course, depends in the next 1 or 2 years on how the regulations pan out. I think all the regulators have woken up and realized that Bitcoin cryptocurrency is big. We can no longer ignore it because it is starting to slightly become mainstream. Like banks are starting to offer ETFs on it or give it to their investors, so on and so forth, right? So some of the mainstream finance is starting to look at cryptocurrency as a source of investment. So regulators are now saying, okay, since everything is banks are all looking at this, let us also put down the regulations clearly, and that would be the key driver, I guess. How, like Harsha said, will the regulations pan out? Will they sort of take a bit of a sledgehammer approach? Then this will be bad for cryptocurrency, of course. If they take a little more nuanced stance, that will be good as well. So that could be the next, turning point when regulations clarify and how friendly they are.
See, so I mean, with respect to what we saw over the pandemic, do you think there's any sort of correlation between a financial crisis and a rise in value of cryptocurrencies? Like, do you think there's anything
What do you mean?
about that relation?
No, generally, okay. So I think you're looking at whether this is a safe haven currency, right? So generally, when crises happen, people move to safe haven currencies like USD or gold and so on and so forth. I don't think cryptocurrencies are a safe haven currency by any stretch of imagination. I mean, they're one of the most volatile asset classes. They do seem to benefit from global liquidity. So a surge of liquidity, which goes into all risk classes, stocks, bonds, everything. The prices have all gone through the roof. So that would also flow into cryptocurrencies. If you have a lot of risk appetite, go and buy cryptocurrencies. That's the way I see it. And that's how it seems to correlate in this particular pandemic as well.
Okay, fair enough.
The other thing is all cryptocurrencies are not equal. It's not like saying the stock market will go up. This all will go up. The liquidity and all those things that Ajay is talking about, those things will still behave like the stock market. But if you look at each individual cryptocurrency, each dog will have its day, in the sense that supposing some new application or some new developments happen in a particular space, and if some companies adopt it, one cryptocurrency might see a 10x or 20x. So if you're looking at speculating on cryptocurrencies, you'll need to be clued into the technology developments in that space, rather than saying that, let me bet on macroeconomic events. See, macroeconomic events will give you returns, but it will not give you crypto returns, right? The crypto returns that everybody, is like, crazy about is like the 100x, 50x, 20x, I don't know, whatever number, right? And for that, you need to be really clued into the space. Not all of them will see the same kind of growth. Bitcoin is not going to give you a 20x anymore. Or
Great,
I'm assuming so. It's highly unlikely that that will happen. And if you really want those kind of returns, you need to bet on those which are making a difference, which are creating that online offline bridge, to the real world. And you need to find out those that are making the lives of people better.
Fair enough. I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover today. I just want to say thank you again for taking the time out of your day to speak to us. Very interesting conversation. I think our viewers will agree as well. So thanks. And we will, I guess, send you the copy of this interview and a transcript. And
yes, please.
Sure. Thank you.
Prove it before we
Thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye.